all, I'm Propagandist and welcome back to the Propagandist channel. It's time for a bit more Girls and Panzer content, which I haven't actually done for a while now. It's been a few months since my last video, that one where I did the 5 really good tanks that have appeared in GUP, but time to do something a little bit different, I think, this time around. So, those of you who are, avid internet users might well be aware of this site, which we're on right here, called Tier List Maker. Now, tier lists are a bit of a thing that seem to have become quite popular, I think, probably a few months back. Don't know if they're really actually still popular at the moment, but so, maybe I'm coming to this actually kind of a bit late. But people like to take some of their favourite franchises, whether that's anime, whether that's video games, whatever it may be, and they like to make big rankings of all their favourite characters. They like to set up these kind of different categories and then put their characters into each one depending on how they feel towards said character. And so that's what I'm going to be doing today with the Girls and Panzer characters, because as far as I'm aware I don't think anyone's actually done one. Then again, I haven't actually really checked, if I'm being honest, so maybe people have done it and I'm not being original at all. If so, I can live with that, I don't care. So here's the thing, I actually did an initial attempt at recording this video. Unfortunately, my audio commentary fucked up. I forgot to actually enable my microphone, which was a bit of a stupid move on my part, but here we are, so I'll give it another shot. Doesn't matter that, I made an initial attempt. It's not like I'm trying to do something blind here. So, as you can see, we've got our categories ranked up here, just to sort of take you through what we've got. I've actually created 7 categories in total. By default, Tier List Maker actually came with about 5 of them, but I added a couple more just for my own satisfaction. So as you can see, up at the top there, we've got the S rank, S for Supreme, the best characters are going to go up there, so basically any character who I think is worthy of being regarded as one of Girls and Panzer's best. Underneath that we have the A rank, so that's for characters who I think are really good, I really like them, but I wouldn't necessarily put them in the S rank. Then underneath that we have the B rank for characters who are okay, so I like them, maybe not as much as A or S ranks, but they're alright for what they are. Underneath that, coming in at C, we then have the no inclination rank, and so essentially what this means is it's for characters who I personally don't really have any kind of strong feelings either way towards, so I don't really dislike them, but I don't like them either, so it's kind of like characters who I'm basically indifferent towards in essence. Then, in the sort of lower half of the grid, we have the D rank, starting with the meh category. That's literally how I describe it, as you see there in the box. So in essence, this isn't necessarily for characters that I dislike. It's not that I dislike or hate them. It's just that personally, they're not my cup of tea. But then underneath that we have the E rank for don't like. I don't like this character because for various reasons. In essence, maybe they're just not a likeable character, or maybe, I don't know, their character is kind of shallow and they could do with more. But then you'll also notice we've got 7th rank down at the bottom, which is the don't know category. So this that bottom category there is kind of the odd one out, and that's not the same necessarily as the C category. So here's the thing, right? If you look down at the list of GUP characters whose faces you can see there in the icons, we've got quite a mixture there, mainly drawn from the TV series, from the OVAs, including the Anzio OVA, and of course the Derfil movie. Now, the thing is, there's also a few in there from Das Finale, which is going to be kind of difficult, I do think, because here's the thing, Das Finale has not yet been licensed for release here in the UK, so I haven't been able to watch it. The only way I would be able to watch Das Finale would be to just find a site that's streaming it, but the problem is, I don't know of any kind of legally reputable anime streaming sites that actually have any of Das Finale on them, so the only places really to find them are on sites which are kind of a bit sketchy, and which I'm very reluctant to go anywhere near, let alone actually watch content on them. So I'll try and rank the Das Finale characters as best as I can, but bear in mind that unlike a lot of the other characters, my opinions of them will be informed by things like supplementary material or things I've just read about them on the Girls and Panzer wiki or whatever. So, like I say, I'll try my best. Now, of course, ranking these characters from Girls and Panzer is actually going to be tricky in certain respects, because the thing about Girls and Panzer is there's a lot of characters, and a lot of them are obviously just kind of members of the supporting cast who maybe don't go through the same kind of things like character development as the main sort of 5 characters, and so as a result, in order to kind of really ascertain how they develop as characters and therefore how how well you might rank or rate them. Sometimes you have to kind of consider them as part of the team that they're a part of. So yeah, it'll be an interesting challenge, I do think, this one. But I'll give it my best shot, that's all. Okay, so to get things kind of started, I think we're going to start, of course, with the Anglerfish team themselves, the 5 main characters. That's the logical point at which to begin, and I think we're going to start immediately by getting old Yukari over here and putting her straight into that fucking S tier, okay? Here's the thing, right? I feel like if I put Yukari anywhere lower than an S tier, people watching this would probably start, sharpening their pitchforks and lighting their torches and would be coming for me straight away. So yeah, Yukari's got to go up there. And do I really need to actually go into too much detail about why Yukari deserves that kind of position? She is probably the face of the show. I know Miho technically is meant to be the protagonist, but Yukari, I believe, is probably the most popular character, I believe, to have, that most people like from Girls and Panzer. I mean, what's not to love there? She's kind of bubbly, she's lovely, she's lively, she has a great knowledge of tanks and all that. She is basically the tank buff's kind of wet dream, let's be honest here. So I hope you can see why, Yukari's definitely got to be up there in that S tier. But speaking of Miho, so we'll go with her next. Now, Miho, I think, as a protagonist for Girls and Panzer, she is, I think the best kind of protagonist, really, that Girls and Panzer could ask for. Now, she does go through notable character development, obviously, in the TV series. She starts off as someone who isn't really keen on Senshido because of bad experiences, but then as the show progresses, she actually finds that Senshido can be fun if, you're in a team with the right people. And so, Miho definitely has plenty of endearing qualities. She's kind of, sensitive, smart, good tactician, but also I think what makes her kind of endearing as well is she's a bit klutzy, as you see in the, at least in the first episode of Girls and Panzer, where she's a bit clumsy and going around. So, yeah, a little bit klutzy, but she is clever, she does have a brain, and she is a kind of nice person overall. So, you know what? I think Miho probably deserves to go in the S tier as well. She's pretty good, yeah. Now let's think about the next of the Anglerfish team characters. So we have Hana Isuzu. Now Hana, I like Hana, she's a nice character. I'm not sure if I put her in the S tier though, just because her kind of character arc, I think, maybe isn't quite as notable as Miho is necessarily. And I mean, the thing is, don't get me wrong, Hana has a lot of good qualities. She's sort of graceful, kind of very quiet, but also quite sort of resilient, quite tough. And she's, of course, the Ikebana practitioner. And there's the whole thing with her mother in the TV series not approving of Senshido at first, but then kind of coming round to it. So there's a bit of a character arc there, but like I say, I don't think her character arc is maybe quite as notable as Miho's. So for that reason, I'm going to put Hana in the A tier. So she's still a pretty good character, and I really like her. So she's definitely worthy of being in, if not the S tier, the A tier. Now we have old sleepy girl herself, old Mako Reise. Now, once again, I'm thinking I'm probably going to put Mako in the A tier. Again, there is a bit of a character arc with her, maybe not quite as overt, perhaps, as Miho's. So the whole kind of character arc with Mako is, apart from being, sleepy, she also has her relationship with her grandmother. You learn she's an orphan, she doesn't have any parents, she got into a fight with them just before they died, and she's regretted it ever since. Things like that. As well as the fact that, I mean, technically, there is a little bit of development. I think it's in something like episode 7 of the actual TV anime, where she does mention that ever since she started doing Senshido, her blood pressure has actually improved a bit. So there's elements of a character arc going on there, but like I say, maybe not quite as notable as Miho's. Now, I would still probably actually put Mako up here in the A tier, because she is just generally quite an entertaining character for kind of a different reason, perhaps, to her teammates, whereas her teammates like Miho, and Sayori and Hana sort of have that very cutesy vibe going on. I mean, don't get me wrong, Mako has a bit of a cutesy vibe as well, but Mako is a bit different because she can be a bit more sort of moody and a bit more surly because of her, the fact that she's so sleepy half the time, she has low blood pressure, things like that. So I think, that makes her kind of distinct, maybe, from her teammates. So for that reason, or for those reasons I've all just explained, Mako goes in the A tier as well. Now, finally, from the Anglerfish team, we have Sayori. So this Sayori, when I kind of made my first attempt at recording this video, I was sort of a bit torn on whether to put her in the A or the B category, because Compared to her teammates, Sayori maybe doesn't have much of a character arc in the TV anime. Indeed, actually, in the GOP franchise as a whole, as far as I'm aware. Now, here's the thing, actually, that I didn't really mention before, but which I should probably mention here before we get too far into the video. I am basing a lot of my opinions of these characters on the TV anime, the OVAs, which includes the Anzio one, Dare film, and limited information, of course, that I'm aware of regarding Das Finale. So I know that that's not, however, an exhaustive list of what the Girls and Panzer franchise actually holds. Because the thing is, Girls and Panzer obviously has a lot of mangas as well as that, like Ribbon Warrior, Little Army, Motto Love Love Sakusen Des, things like this. But the thing is, I haven't really looked into the mangas all that much, so I really don't know anything from there in terms of whether Sayori gets any kind of character development in that, whether that's even actually canonical. I don't actually know. But you know what? I'm prepared to put Sayori in the A tier, but I think compared to Hana and Mako, maybe she, you know, if we could actually, if there was another rank here, let's say we had an A plus and an A minus rank, Sayori would be in the A minus, whereas I think Hana and Mako would be in A plus, so to speak, if that makes sense. Just because, like I say, I don't think Sayori kind of goes through quite the same sort of character arc to the same extent as her teammates. There is a glimmer of one, because the thing is, when you first encounter Sayori, you know, I think the whole kind of thing about her is that she's made out to be a bit sort of ditzy, a bit of an airhead, who kind of prioritises sort of relationships, love, that kind of thing over anything else. But, you know, towards the end of the TV anime, there is the thing where she reveals she managed to get a radio license or something. She studied for it and managed to get it, which would suggest that actually there is a brain cooking between those ears, and that actually, you know, she can be more than she first appears. So there is that, but like I say, that doesn't really come out until towards the end of the TV anime, and it's very kind of brief. So I'd say that, you know, like I say, compared to other teammates, Sayori's character arc maybe isn't quite as standout or notable, but nonetheless she has got a nice personality. She's very cheerful, she's very bubbly, she is quite a nice person overall. Hence why, even though maybe, you know, like I say, she's an A tier, though I'd say a slightly lower A tier than her two teammates there. Okay, so that's Anglefish team done and out of the way. Now we're going to start picking out some other characters. I've noticed as well on this one, there's a real mix of people here. So we've even got some of the adult characters, the really obscure ones, from the TV series and Dare film, which is going to be interesting really placing them. You know, obviously there are characters who aren't actually included in this list. Obviously characters from the mangas, for example, like Ribbon Warrior, because I know Ribbon Warrior has some distinct characters of its own. But, you know, they're not included, and I'm kind of glad they're not, because I don't really know anything about them. Who should we go with next, then? I think the next one that I want to go with is probably Turtle Team, because we've got the three of them down here. So Turtle Team, of course, is probably one of the most notable teams after Anglefish in the Ori Senjudo lineup. Let's start with Anzu here, Miss Former Student Council President, because I believe that as of Das Finale, she's no longer the Student Council President. That's now Hana, I believe. Anzu is an interesting character. So she starts out kind of as the... Well, you think that she's basically the antagonistic character of the series at first, where she's kind of forcing Miho back into Senjudo against her will. But, of course, towards the end, you know, once you get to, I think it's like episode 8 or 9, you actually realise that she and the Student Council have a big motivation for acting in that way, and that actually she's just trying to save the school, things like that. And once that reveal occurs, Anzu does kind of very much mellow out and lighten up and actually become, you know, a fairly reliable character. In fact, actually, having said that, I think, you know, even though she does come across as a bit of a kind of bossy, antagonistic character to begin with, actually, as the episodes progress, even before the big reveal, there are glimmers that actually she is quite a nice person. You know, she is kind of supportive of Miho in the strategy meeting for the match against Saint Gloriana and all that. So, Anzu... Yeah, you know what? I think Anzu is definitely going to be in the upper half of this grid. She is a bit more of a kind of nuanced character. She's interesting. So, you know what, Anzu? I think you can go in the A tier. Definitely. I think you're up there. Now, next we come to her sort of, well, her loader on the team in the Hetzer, old Momo Kawashima. Now, I'm going to be honest, Kawashima, I'm kind of meh about. She's going to have to go down in that D tier, unfortunately, so apologies to any Momo Kawashima fans watching this, but, you know, I get it. She's, you know, very sort of committed to helping her school, and she's very hard-working and all that, and so she does have some good qualities that do prevent her from being lower. I personally don't really care much for the character, just because she's a bit of a stress head and can be very bossy, but, yeah, I mean she's a bit of a meh character for me. I'm not really bothered about her, to be honest. On the other hand, we then have Yuzu Koyama, the driver of the Hetzer. Now, Yuzu is, I think, definitely going to be higher than Kawashima. Is she going to be as high as Anzu? I'm not sure. Maybe. So let's think about it. So what do we know of Yuzu? I mean, Yuzu seems like a very nice enough character. She doesn't seem like a sort of confrontational kind of girl. She's very nice. She tries to sort of mediate. She does, I think, have a sort of good relationship with Hana Isuzu, as we saw in, I think, episode 7 of the TV series. And yeah, I think overall she's just very nice. And I know actually, I'm pretty sure there is a chapter in Motto Love Love Sakusen Des which shows a slightly different side to her, where she can get moody, and she has that thing where if she's mad at people, she just gives them the silent treatment. So there is another kind of dimension to her personality beyond just being nice. Problem is, though, the problem with Motto Love Love Sakusen Des is that I don't know if that manga is supposed to be canonical. Is it canon? I'm not entirely sure. Are the events that happen in that manga series actually supposed to be canon? I really don't know. Maybe someone can answer in the comments below. But, oh man, you know what? Fine, Yuzu, you can go in the A tier. I mean, I also just thought about that one fan servicey scene with her in like episode 2 or whatever it was of the TV series. Fuck it, you go in A tier, Yuzu. You're nice enough. You're fine. You can go there. Okay, right, which team should we go with next? I think we'll go through the sort of 3 principal starting ORI teams apart from Anglefish and Turtles. So we'll go with Hippos, we'll go with Ducks, we'll go with Rabbits next, since they've been in it right from the beginning, in the franchise that is. So, old Erwin over here, captain of the Hippo team. So, Erwin, of course, is another of Girls and Panzer's very notable characters. She's a very memorable character, not least for her appearance. So, you know, from a kind of purely cosmetic point of view, the character does look awesome. She has an interesting design. And of course, here's the thing, right? When Erwin and her team kind of start out at the beginning of the franchise, they're not very good, as is the case actually with a lot of ORI's teams. But once you get to, you know, the kind of midway point and beyond of the TV anime, once you get into their film, you do see how far Hippo Team has actually come in the anime. They are very good. So, for example, if you look at the match against Saint Gloriana in episode 3 and 4 of the Girls and Panzer TV series, you know, you'll see how Hippo Team was kind of a bit trash because they made the mistake of putting those giant Nobori banners on their Stug 3. But then, of course, after that, they realise that the Stug 3's big advantage is it has a low profile, and then they start to really kind of fight using that to their advantage. So, from a tactical point of view, they do get better. And I'm going to kind of treat sort of Hippo Team as a team here rather than as individuals, because I feel like in order to judge them, you have to consider them as a team. So you know what? I do quite like Erwin, I do like Hippo Team. So I'm going to put all of the Hippo Team members up here in the A tier, just because I quite like them. Caesar in particular also has a distinguishing feature as well. Obviously Caesar has a relationship, or a friendship rather, with Carpaccio from Anzio, and that kind of first appears in the Anzio OVA, and also appears to some extent in their film, which also makes her quite notable. So she has that other aspect to her character as well. Right, next up we have the Duck team, and I'm going to be straight up honest here. Shinobu, you go up there. Akebi, you go in the S tier. Taiko, you're going in the A tier. Noriko, you're going in the B tier. So, people are probably wondering, wow, this is quite a bit of variation in the team here, what's going on? So, Duck Team are probably one of my favourite teams as well in Girls and Panzer. I do really like them, and I think what makes me really like them is the fact that they have probably one of the worst tanks in the entire show, in the form of the Type 89, because the thing is, the Type 89, by Japanese standards of the day, World War II that is, was a medium tank, but actually by comparative standards of, say, for example, the US or the UK or Germany or Russia, the Type 89 really was more of like a light tank. by their sort of standards. And so it's entertaining in the show, watching the Duck team trying to basically use their tank to its most effective, in spite of the fact that it's actually quite a rubbish tank, and they do actually pull it off quite well. So, you know, if you take, for example, the final episodes of the TV series in the battle against Kuromorimine, Duck Team is one of the ones that pretty much survives almost right through to the very end of the match, and they cause absolute, you know, chaos, essentially, in their Type 89, even though they just don't have the firepower to even take out any of the big sort of German heavy tanks. So they're quite notable in that regard. And now, you know, the thing is, as a team, you can certainly see a kind of arc there going on. As individual characters, of course, they're just supporting cast members, so they don't get kind of individual development. So you're probably wondering, why have you put these two, Shinobu and Akebi, up here in S tier alongside Yukari and Miho? Well, I'm going to be brutally honest, I am biased, that's why. Because you remember that friggin' Who's Your Girls and Panzer waifu video a while back that I did? So, yeah, Shinobu and Akebi were my Girls and Panzer waifus, hence why they're up in the S tier. And since, obviously, they're part of Duck Team, and I really like Duck Team, Taiko, you go in A tier, purely because I also quite like your sort of character design. Noriko, you're going down in B tier because you're not... I think if I had to rank my Duck Team members in terms of, you know, who are the favourites, I think Noriko would just be at the bottom, but that's not because I dislike her. You know, on the opposite. In fact, actually... No, you know what, Noriko? No, we're going to move you into A tier, actually, now that I think about it. I was originally going to put you in B tier there just because I felt like you were the least notable, in my eyes, in the team. But actually, no, now that I think about it, that's completely wrong. She is actually quite noteworthy in the team. She's actually quite a nice person. Energetic, very kind of passionate and, you know, forward-moving. But, I don't know, she is just, yeah, I think actually, in retrospect, B tier actually is probably a little low for Noriko. Okay, you can go up there then. So far we've got a few S tiers, we've got a lot of A tiers, and we've got one D tier. Let's go on to Rabbit Team next. So, let's start with Azusa, the team captain of the M3 Lee. Azusa, I think I'm going to put in the A tier as well, because Rabbit Team and Azusa in particular went through some very notable team development over the course of the TV anime. So if you kind of look at their first couple of matches, so the practice match on the Ori carrier where they try to run away and end up taking their own tank out, then of course there's the battle against Saint Gloriana where they panic and run off. But then from there, Rabbit Team kind of goes through a sort of they go through a complete turnaround where they try and get better and better. And you know, by the end of the TV anime, they are much better than they were at the start, where they're managing to take out heavy tanks from the Kuromorimine side. And similarly, in their film, they show themselves to be quite capable as well. And Azusa as captain, obviously, is in the thick of that. She's quite notable in that regard. But also, I think what probably puts Azusa up in the A tier is the fact that of all of the Ori team characters, she is probably the one who would probably take over from Miho as the overall commander as of when Miho was to graduate from Ori High School, hence why she's up there. As for the rest of her team, you know what, I'm going to put them sort of in the B rank, because I think that as characters, you know, they're lovely characters, but I wouldn't put them on the same level necessarily as the A tier characters, just in terms of how kind of noteworthy they are. I mean, you know, they have their own kind of personalities, but I just think the problem is maybe they lose a bit of the limelight to some of these slightly more eccentric personalities, such as those in Hippo Team or those in Duck Team, for example. So, yeah, I like Rabbit Team, don't get me wrong, maybe not quite as much as Duck or Hippo, but they're still pretty good, so I'm going to put them there. Next up, we're getting into the teams which came into the Ori Senjudo Club at a kind of later stage. So we're going to start with the Mallards, the student prefects or whatever they are. So I'm going to kind of rate their whole team right now, and I'm going to put them in the C rank. So here's the kind of thing. Sadoko, I think, is very much the most kind of standout personality from their group, and in essence, her character kind of comes down to sort of someone who is quite uptight about the rules and not wanting them to be broken, but then, you know, you get to their film and suddenly she comes out with, rules are made to be broken and all that. And you know, she's kind of noteworthy in that regard. Her teammates, Pazumi and Gamoyo, whatever they're called, I don't think we really see too much of them for me to really kind of make much of a judgment. I don't really have any strong inclinations about them. They have a good tank, obviously the Charby 1 bis, which is a very notable one for being a French heavy tank. But other than that, I don't really have any kind of strong feelings about them either way. I don't dislike them, but they're not really... I don't really like their team either. So, unfortunately, yes, they kind of have to go in the C rank, personally, for me. Next up, we have the Leopons, the ones in the Porsche Tiger. I think the Leopons definitely deserve to go up into the A rank. I think, as a team, they're kind of a bit more distinct from a lot of the other Ori characters. So obviously, whilst a lot of the characters in Girls and Panzer have that kind of cutesy moe thing going on with a lot of them, and whilst, you know, Leopon team does still to some extent, what I think makes Leopon team sort of distinct is that for all their moe qualities, they're also a bit tomboyish, with the fact that they are the automotive club, they're engineers, engineering lovers. So that just immediately kind of makes them distinct in my eyes from a lot of the other Ori teams. And of course, if you look at how they handle their Porsche Tiger, because the thing is, the Porsche Tiger was not a great tank. It was prone to breakdowns, things like that. And so it's interesting to see how this team kind of gets around the weaknesses. And they actually do some real damage in that thing. So if you look at, for example, at the Kuromorimine battle at the end of the TV series, the Porsche Tiger plays a pretty important role in that match, particularly towards the end, when they use it to kind of block that entranceway so that Miho can take on Maho in a one-on-one fight without interference by any of the other Kuromorimine team tanks. So that, I think, is pretty notable, and that is why I'm going to put Leopon team quite high up on this list. Okay, next we have the Anteaters, the video game nerds. Now, the Anteater team... You know, the problem with the Anteater team is that I think compared to other teams, maybe we haven't quite seen as much of them. So the Anteaters don't really come in the TV show until right towards the end, and even then, they are the first of Ori's tanks to get taken out in the match against Kuromorimine. So in that particular match, we just don't really see anything of them. Then, of course, by their film, they do improve. So they do resolve to make themselves stronger. So there is a character arc there, which I think is noteworthy and which we shall take into account when ranking them here. But, you know, in their film, they kind of get a lot stronger, and they do sort of hold their own a bit more. So Anteaters, they're not my favourite team, but I do kind of like them anyway, so I'm going to put them in the B tier for me, alongside the other Rabbit team members. Yeah, because I think that kind of reflects them fairly well. Now, there's actually only one more Ori team for us to actually get through here, and that is the Shark team. Now, Shark team, of course, first appears in Das Finale Chapter 1, and this is actually going to be kind of difficult for me to rank and maybe a bit controversial, because here's the thing, I haven't actually been able to watch Das Finale Chapter 1, indeed any of the Das Finale stuff, because like I said earlier, it hasn't yet been released, licensed for release over here in the UK, at least as far as I'm aware. Last time I checked, it hadn't been. So I haven't seen that, so my ranking of them here is going to be purely based upon what I know of their team, based on their design and based on the wiki, the Girls and Panzer wiki, and on any other materials I've come across. And based purely on that, I am going to rank the Shark Team girls in the fucking A tier. Now, some people are going to find this controversial because, like I said, I haven't watched Das Finale, so I don't know what they're like actually in combat when their tank is sent into battle, because of course they have the Mark IV, the World War I tank, which would put it kind of on an even lower scale than the Type 89 perhaps. But what I like about them is the design of those characters. It is the piratical slash sailor slash nautical theme going on in that team, and it's also the fact that apparently, according to materials I've read, they're supposed to be delinquents, so kind of like Leopon team, who kind of challenge that moe sort of archetype a bit. I think that Shark Team thus kind of stands out a lot from from the other Ori girls, and that kind of makes them notable. So this might be a controversial decision, again, like I say, just because I haven't watched Das Finale Chapter 1 yet, but I'm going to put them in the A tier, just because I think they look very interesting, and they'd be a very different kind of set of characters with a different dynamic. So for that reason, they're going there. But that is now the Ori girls all finished. They're all out the way. So now it's a matter of going through some of the other characters. Now, I think we're just going to sort of dip in and out of here a bit more randomly. We're going to actually try and get rid of some of these adult characters towards the bottom, because there's a lot of kind of more, well, there's a lot of characters here who don't really appear all that often, and so it might be, you know, easy to kind of get through these fairly quickly. So, First and foremost, I'm just going to put these three characters into the don't know category. So, if you're wondering who these three are down here, at first I was a bit confused, I wasn't sure who they were. I believe, though, on reflection, that they are basically match umpires, who appear just at the start of certain matches, and whose role literally is to say, we are about to start the match, and things like this. So, here's the thing about those characters. Though we've seen them in things like TV episodes and whatever else have you, we don't really know anything about them beyond simply those minor little several second moments where they appear. So for that reason, that's why I've put them in the don't know, because I feel like I just can't rate them. We don't know anything about their personality or really anything about their character, so it's kind of impossible for me to put them anywhere. Okay, so with them out of the way, see, for example, we've got some more adult characters down here. I think we've got Yukari's parents, so old Mama Yukari and old Papa Yukari, who I think I'm going to put in the B rank. You know, we don't really see much of them, but what we do see of them, they seem to be fairly nice people, but beyond that I can't really say all that much else about them. So yeah, they're going to go in the B rank, definitely. Can't really put them any higher, personally, I feel. We've got Hana's mother as well. What's she called? Yuri, is it? Yuri Isuzu? Yuri, I kind of have no real inclination towards. She appears, obviously, briefly in the TV series, and there's the whole thing about her with her not approving of Hana participating in Senshido, and then eventually being won around. But I feel like Yuri is there as a character to help Hana develop, rather than to see her kind of develop it in her own right. So, like I say, I have no real personal feelings towards that particular character, hence why she's in the C category. We've also got Mako's grandmother. Actually, also, now that I think about it, we've got Yuri Isuzu, but we haven't got what's-his-face, have we? Shinzaburo, the guy who works for Yuri Isuzu, the young guy who Sayori at first thinks is Hana's boyfriend or something. Yeah, he's not actually on this list, because we've literally only got two more male characters here, and neither of them are Shinzaburo, so he's kind of missing off that list. If Shinzaburo had actually been on this list, though, I would have probably put him in the B tier, alongside Yukari's parents, just because he seems like an all-round swell kind of guy, but again, we don't really see much else of him. So, Mako's grandmother, let's rate her next. So, she appears very much, I think it is episode 7, isn't it, when Mako learns that her grandmother's had to be taken to the hospital. And from what we see of her, she's quite a sharp-tongued, fiery kind of old woman. But then at the end of the series, you do see her sort of celebrating Orai's victory a bit. So the implication is that she does very much care for Mako. She just has a kind of very tough love way of doing things. And for that reason, you know what? In a series that is very much overwhelmingly dominated by youthful characters, I think we'll put this old woman up here in the B category. So again, I don't think we see all that much of her. We can't really see. I think there's not enough of her there in the franchise to justify any higher, but she is an interesting character nonetheless. And yeah, I kind of do like her, so she can go there. I think that kind of fits her just right. Now, who else have we got? Let's start going into some other teams as well. Let's start with St. Gloriana, so I think they're a good place to go next. We've actually got 5 characters from there. So we'll start with Darjeeling. Darjeeling, I think, has to go in the A rank. She's probably one of the more notable opposing team commanders, not least because she's the first opponent that the Ori team actually goes up against in the TV series. She also has the distinction, of course, of being one of the few characters to have beaten the Ori team more than once, first in the TV series, then again in their film. So there's that. But there's also the fact that I think, just as a character, of course, she's very elegant. She comes out with her sort of proverbs, her aphorisms, and based on that whole thing about, you know, her personality as well, I'm going to put Orange Pico up there alongside her, because I feel like Darjeeling and Orange Pico are a bit of like a double act. Darjeeling comes out with the sayings, the proverbs, and Orange Pico just sort of looks at her kind of a bit confused, and that's where a bit of the humour actually comes from. So I feel like you have to kind of put Pico up there as well. Now we have Assam. So Assam, we don't really learn anything about in the TV series about her character, because she never actually speaks, but she does speak in their film, and we sort of learn that she again is very sort of graceful, demure, but also has a bit of an analytical mind. I'm going to put her in the B rank, just because I feel like there's not enough of her that I've seen to warrant going any higher, but I think she's still likeable as a character. Rosehip, on the other hand, definitely has to go into the A tier. I think Rosehip is certainly very interesting. She, you know, she's very entertaining as a character, because she's a bit sort of, well, she's a bit more rowdy than her St. Gloriana teammates, and that kind of makes her stand out a bit. And if you watch, obviously, their film, her antics in The Crusader definitely are quite noteworthy. But of course, I can't really put her any higher, because she's just a member of the supporting cast. She doesn't go through any real kind of character arc, as far as I'm aware, so I can't put her any higher than that. Then we have this other St. Gloriana girl, whose name I actually forget. It was something beginning with R, but I do recognise her. She's the captain of the Matilda 2, I do believe, that gets ambushed by Duck Team in episode 4 or whatever it is of the TV series, and she almost kind of falls for the same. Well, she does get taken out by a similar kind of trick in their film. This one, I don't know, I have to put her in the C category personally, just because although we have seen a bit of her in the show, I don't think we've really seen enough for me to really formulate any strong opinions on her either way, so I'm going to put her there. I don't know, I don't dislike her, but I can't really say anything in particular about her either. Okay, so that's St. Gloriana down and out the way. Who else have we got here? Who should we go for next? Should we go for Saunders next, since there's only 3 of them? Old Kay over here, she definitely, for me, goes into the A tier. So the thing about Kay from Saunders is that while she kind of initially comes across as maybe being a bit boastful, you actually quickly realise that she does have a very strong sense of fair play. She's actually a very nice, quite cheerful person overall, and above all, she doesn't take herself or Senjudo too seriously. She actually realises that Senjudo is not war, it is just a sport, and that therefore it's about having fun, rather than necessarily about winning at all costs and things like that. And so, based purely on that, Kay comes across to me as someone who is fairly laid back and fairly nice, so good for you, Kay. Also, you know, you're the commander of a team full of Sherman tanks, and I do love the Sherman tank. It is one of my favourite World War II tanks. So, speaking of obviously the other Saunders team members, we got old Naomi, or Naomi, if they pronounce it in the actual TV anime, I believe. She's the sniper of the Saunders team. Yeah, I'd put her in the B rank. She's okay, you know, she certainly is a bit more tomboyish than Moe, which again makes her kind of stand out from a lot of other Girls and Panzer characters. But, you know, beyond just being a bit of a crack shot with her Sherman, I don't really know enough about the character, I feel, to actually put her any higher than a B. Then we have old Arisa here, Miss Wiretapping herself, who likes to try cheating to get the upper hand. So, Arisa is another character who I don't really have any kind of inclination around. She's not someone I dislike it by any means, but I don't really like the character either. I think probably she suffers from kind of being overshadowed a bit by the likes of Kay, for example, as well as other characters in the show. So, sorry Arisa, but yeah, you get a C ranking, personally for me. Okay, who do we have next? We've got the Anzio crew. Okay, I'm going to straight up say all of the Anzio girls are going straight up into the friggin' A tier, okay? So, Anchovy, the team commander over here, whose icon I'm sort of jiggling about on the screen, she's definitely a very memorable character in GUP. So she's kind of lively. She also has that sort of black shirt inspired uniform, which is certainly quite notable. Her design, therefore, is quite memorable. And even though at first, you know, she comes across as being very determined to beat ORI, she comes across as being very much an enemy, another enemy for them to face. Actually, by the end of the Anzio OVA, she turns out to actually be a pretty good sport. She graciously concedes to the Ori team and throws a very Italian-style party in honour of their victory. But also, I think the Anzio team, Anchovy included, are very much a good source of humour in the show. Because if you watch the Anzio OVA, for example, sorry, I'm getting gas coming up my throat from my tea. If you watch the Anzio OVA, there's a lot of humour that is derived from their antics in the battle between them and Ori, and again in their film, when you have Anchovy and her two comrades here packed into that little CV-33, grumbling and protesting about each other. But on the subject, of course, of her comrades, Carpaccio here, she's pretty noteworthy as being slightly quieter and a bit more kind of composed than her two teammates. But she still strikes you as a fairly nice person. And of course, there's the fact that she has that pre-existing friendship with Caesar that I mentioned before, which I think is also quite noteworthy. And then you have old Pepperoni over here, who again is she's very much a comic relief character, and she's quite entertaining. So that's why I've put the Anzio girls up there in the A tier. I think they're worthy of it, to be honest. Next up, Pravda, the Soviet-themed team. This is where we again might have some quite wild variation in characters here. So, first and foremost, before I go to the main sort of three up here, I'm just going to get these two, and I'm going to put them straight into the don't know category. So, I do know where these two characters who I've just put down there, I know where they come in. I believe they are KV2 crew members, but other than that, I don't think we really see enough of them for me to actually really rate them in any of these categories. Maybe there's more kind of on them in the mangas or anything like that, but obviously because I haven't haven't read any of the mangas really, I just can't really say. But now let's get on to the main three. Katusha, let's start with her. This might be a bit of a controversial choice on my part here. Katusha, unfortunately, is going to have to go down in the D rank. Now, some of you might be howling with alarm there and thinking, God damn it, Propagandist, how can you put freaking Katusha down there? What's going on? What's this bullshit that's going on here? Let me explain. So, I think this really kind of comes down to personal taste a bit. I know Katusha is actually very popular in the Girls and Panzer franchise. She's a very popular character. But I think, for me personally, I'm kind of meh about her. I mean, I get it. She's interesting in the sense that she's a bit of like a little Napoleon, has that slight Napoleon complex at first, but then ultimately turns out to be a bit of an ally. And yeah, when she's in battles, she can be quite entertaining, but other than that, I'm not too keen on the character. She's a bit too much of a lolly for my tastes, really, if I'm being brutally honest, hence why she's down there. So, she does have some qualities that prevent her from being lower, but she's not one of my favourites, if I'm being brutally honest. However, Nona, on the other hand, I think I'm definitely going to be putting up there in the A tier. So, Nona, I think, is more interesting. Her design, I think, is striking first and foremost. The fact that she's a lot more quieter, but also the fact that she's quite a crack shot when she's in the IS-2, I think all kind of combines to make her a much more striking character, and one who is much worthier of a higher rank, I feel, than Katusha. I know Nonna is quite popular among the GUP fan base as well. And then we have Clara over here, who I'm going to put in the B rank, just because Clara obviously first appears in their film, and she's noteworthy as being, I think, the only non-Japanese character in the show. Yes, I know, non-Japanese, considering that we have a load of other characters who apparently are Japanese, even though they don't actually look Japanese at all. But yeah, Clara, is Clara's backstory that she was a Russian student who was accidentally transferred to Pravda, something like that? And so Clara, is noteworthy in that she has a couple of humorous scenes where she constantly speaks Russian, much to the ire of Katusha. But, there's also the scene, of course, later on in the battle against the university team, where Clara makes her big sacrifice, things like that. So, yeah, she has elements to her character that make her kind of noteworthy and likeable. But the problem is, I think, because she has only first appeared in their film, compared to other characters, she hasn't been in the franchise as long, so I feel like I don't know as much about her and can't really rate her any higher at the moment. Who knows, maybe if I was to come back to this tier list at a later point in time, maybe a few years down the line, maybe once Death Finale gets licensed for release over here in the UK, maybe there'll be stuff there that features Clara which would push her up the grid a bit. I don't know. Who knows? Okay, so that's the Pravda team right there. Hope that wasn't too much of a controversy for you, ladies and gentlemen. Who should we go with next? I mean, we've still got a few teams left to get through. We've also still got a few adult characters as well. So let's try and get through some of them. Shiho Nishizumi, Miho and Maho's old mother. She is a character who, personally, I'm going to put in the meh category. Because... Actually, no. I'm not going to put her in D. I'm going to put her in C. So, because the thing about Shiho is, I think she's noteworthy for being a slightly more antagonistic character, in the sense that she very much is set in her ways. She has her opinion of how things should be done, and therefore there's kind of a source of conflict there between her and Miho, which obviously makes for, you know, a bit of tension, because, you know, the show wouldn't be exciting if there wasn't at least a couple of antagonistic characters, disruptive forces, as it were. And so, you know, every franchise needs characters like that from time to time, and Shiho can kind of fit that bill. It's just that most of what we see of Shiho is this very kind of cold, quite clinical, quite aloof woman, which, you know, is noteworthy at first, and at first I was going to put her in the D category purely based on that, but now that I think about it, there are a couple of redeeming points that I can think of which take her out of the meh category and maybe put her into the C. So the fact that at the end of the anime TV series, she does technically applaud Orai's victory. Maybe she does kind of concede to it a bit. And then, you know, on top of that, in their film, even though she's kind of very much determined to eventually prove Miho's kind of approach to Senjudo wrong, she does graciously kind of support Orai's bid for one final match to prevent their closure. So she does support them in that regard. Yeah, you know what, so for those reasons, I'm going to put Shiho in the C category, rather than the D one. That way I think it might reflect a bit better. So, no real strong kind of dislike or like of this character. I think she's very much in the middle for me. But, speaking of, I think, the Nishizumi family, let's get onto the Kuromorimine team, and let's start with Maho over here. Maho is going up in the A tier. In fact, no. You know what? Maho Nishizumi, you're going in the S tier, definitely. At first I was going to put you in that A tier, but actually now that I think about it, you do have a lot of very interesting elements to your character. So actually, you know what? Maho, you can go with your sister up there at the top. Supreme, ladies and gentlemen. So why have I put Maho up there? So when we first encounter Maho in the TV series, she comes across as this very stoic, very kind of composed, quite steely, maybe a sort of a bit expressionless, and thus, you know, she's kind of very impersonal. But actually, by the end of the series, you realise that she does care and love for her sister a lot, and that's also shown in their film, how she supports Miho and helps her out. But also, that's a thing which I believe actually comes across more as well in some of Girls and Panzer's mangas. So, as the older sister of Miho Nishizumi, Maho kind of shoulders a lot of the responsibility for upholding the Nishizumi school of thought, so that Miho can kind of be a bit more free to do her own thing. So in that respect, you could say she's almost a character who's willingly kind of sacrificing herself a bit, in a manner of speaking. And that, for me, kind of makes Maho more notable, and thus possibly worthy of that S tier. So, Maho, you go up there. Then we have Erika, her sub-commander. Erika, for me, is in the B tier. So I like Erika as a character. She is, again, a bit more sort of antagonistic, which makes her kind of notable immediately. But ultimately, she does sort of concede to Orai at the end of the TV series in a slightly more gracious fashion. And she does ultimately come and help out in their film. So, yeah, she's up there. Beyond that, though, I don't think we really know too much about the character. Hence why I've only put her in a B tier. So I feel like maybe if a character was fleshed out a bit more, she could possibly move up the ranking a bit, maybe into an A tier, but for now, B tier I think is appropriate for her. Then we have this other Kuromorimine character here, whose name, I think, is it Akaboshi Kume? Something like that, I can't remember exactly. And This character, I believe, is one of the crew of the Panzer III who Miho rescued after it slid into the river. You remember from Miho's flashbacks and all that in the TV series. And yeah, she seems like a nice enough character. At first, when I made my initial attempt at recording this video, I was going to put her down in the C tier because I didn't really have any strong inclinations. But actually, on reflection, I'm going to put her in the B tier, just purely based on the fact that she does strike you as being a fairly nice person overall. And plus, actually, do you remember that Christmas video I did here on the Propagandist channel a ways back, where I did a silly reading of a chapter from the Motto Love Love Sakusen Des manga? You remember that? I've actually just kind of thought of that now. And that also, I think, kind of reinforces the idea of her as a quite nice character. Again, I don't know whether that's canonical, but yeah, fuck it, I'll use that when informing my opinion of the character. So yeah, I'll put her in the B tier alongside Erica. I think that probably is best for the time being. Who else have we got on here? We've got the freaking Japanese Senshido Federation director dude, who, honestly, I'm gonna put him in no inclination, because he only appears in Def Film, as far as I'm aware, and he's only in a select few scenes. In fact, actually no, you know what, he can go up a bit, maybe, into the B tier, now that I think about it, because although we don't see much of him, he is very supportive of Ori. He does want them to win, and he also does question some of the decisions made by old what's-his-face, Renta Suji, as he's called, the antagonist. And he does kind of voice opposition to the idea of incorporating the Morsakal into the battle between the university team and Ori. So, on the one hand, yeah, he comes across as someone with a sense of fair play and honour. So, okay, purely on that, yeah, we'll put him in the B tier, but I can't really put him any higher than that, personally. He's likeable, but we don't really see enough of him, in my eyes. Speaking of Renta Suji, though, the old friggin' antagonist, he's definitely going straight in that E category for don't like. Now, it's not that he's an antagonist, that's not the reason why I dislike the character. Antagonists can actually be quite popular characters, but the thing with this guy is he feels like a bit of a cardboard cutout villain to me. I don't think really Girls and Panzer has explored this guy in any great depth, as far as I'm aware. I certainly don't remember his character being explored in all that much depth at all, if any, in either the TV series or in Def Film. Maybe something will come out in Des Finale, I don't know, but of course, like I said, on countless occasions, that's not been licensed for release in the UK, so I don't know. But in essence, the thing is, this guy seems to be kind of hell-bent on getting Ori closed down, but okay, that's one thing, but what are his motivations for doing that? Why does he want to do that? Has the GUP franchise ever sort of delved into that? I'm not sure, I don't know. Maybe some of the mangas do, but if they do, I'm not aware of that. So, for that reason, he's going in the don't like category, because, I don't know, I feel like his character is more of like a plot device to help drive things forward and drive the action rather than anything else. God, guess coming from my tea again. Good lord. Okay, who next? I think we'll do the Chiha Tan team. So we have old Kinuyo Nishi over here. I'm going to probably put a lot of these characters into the B tier because I don't think we've seen all that much of them other than what their film showed us. There is also this one character here who I've actually just selected at the moment and I'm waving around the grid. I think this one is a Chiha Tan girl, but I don't recognise her all that well. She must have been a real background one, so I'm going to put her in the don't know category. But the other three Chiha Tan characters who we've got, Kinuyo, I think her name's Tomada, this one here, and the girl with the helmet, whose name I can't actually remember. I think they're interesting. They're not among my favourite GUP characters, but I do kind of like them because obviously there's a bit of humour that's derived from them in the form that obviously because they're Chiha Tan, they're the Japanese themed academy, their only sort of tactic that they seem to know is the Banzai charge, except for this girl here who kind of challenges it and goes against the grain a little bit and tries to challenge them to think of alternate ways of fighting. So they're likeable, but I don't think they've really done much, at least from what I've seen, that makes them kind of stand out as much as some of these higher characters. So that's why I've put them there. Now, oh my gosh, yes, we have the Yakuza Sota team actually next. Old Mika over here. Now, I was Originally I was going to put Mika in the A rank. I'm going to change that. I'm going to put Mika in the S rank, because Mika is quite entertaining in my eyes. Mika is basically like Darjeeling in the sense that she comes out with all these weird proverbs and things, except there's a bit more humour in the sense that a lot of Mika's ramblings are a bit more kind of cryptic and sometimes nonsensical compared to Darjeeling's, and that, I think, like I say, just makes for a bit of humour, because of course you have her teammates who are sort of left a bit stumped by it. So her teammates I'm actually going to put in the A rank. Mika, though, is going to go in that S rank just because of the three of them, she's the most notable for me. And so what I think in particular really sways it with these characters is, although they only really appeared for the first time in their film, so we haven't seen as much of them, the problem is that scene in their film where they use the BT-42 to take on the Pershings that are guarding the Mercer Carl, that scene is so fucking epic. The way they handle that tank is brilliant, and that's why, for me, even though we haven't seen much of them, I think they do shoot up that grid into those top ranks. So there you go, Mika and team, you're up there. Now we're really getting along with some of these characters. I've also noticed we've got What's-Her-Face here, the, what's she called? Army Chono, the Senjudo instructor who instructs Ori. She is a kind of coolish character, yeah. So I'm going to put her in the B rank. I don't think we see enough of her to warrant going higher than that, but she's a cool character, she's likeable, so I think B rank probably is the best place for her. I've also noticed, apart from obviously the university team, we've also got friggin' Alice's mother as well, who is another character who I'm probably going to put in the don't know category, because I feel like we haven't really seen enough of her to really make any kind of judgment, other than the fact that she kind of tells her daughter to make sure to crush Ori. But other than that, I feel like I don't really have enough about her to make any particular judgment. But speaking of Shimada, old Alice over here, so Alice, I think, is interesting as a character in that she's a kind of child prodigy. She's fairly quiet, a bit timid, it seems, at first, but then you realise when the match against the university team actually begins in their film, you learn quickly that she is very kind of good at what she does, and the scene where Miho and Maho are fighting her in their tanks, that is such a great scene in the movie, in my opinion. For that reason, Alice, you're going up there in the A rank. You're a very good character, you're very notable. Then we have her three sort of commanders, Megumi, Azumi and Rumi, I think her name is. These three, yeah, they're interesting. I'm going to put them in the B rank because I feel like we don't know enough about them to really go very higher, but their appearance in their film is quite noteworthy nonetheless, you know, with their Bermuda strategy, things like that, that they pull off. So yeah, I think they're worthy of a B rank, but again, like a lot of the characters in that rank, I wouldn't put them any higher, just because I don't think they're quite as notable as others. And finally, we have three characters left over from Das Finale, the BC Freedom Girls, old Marie and her two comrades whose names I have actually forgotten. I can't quite remember exactly what they were. So this one, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to put the BC Freedom Girls into the no inclination category at this stage, purely because the only information I have on them is based on what I've read on the wiki, without kind of spoiling anything of Das Finale's kind of storyline or anything like that. So I've heard, obviously, that, you know, Marie is supposed to be this kind of very sort of laid-back kind of commander, whereas her two sort of sub-commanders, the whole kind of thing about them is that they constantly bicker and argue. But the problem is, beyond that, because I haven't seen Das Finale, I feel like I can't really say anything more, so that's why I've put them in the C category. But like I said earlier, if I was to do another tier list for Girls and Panzer like this sometime in the future, after I've had a chance to see Das Finale, whenever that might be, maybe that ranking would change a bit. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, that is my Girls and Panzer tier list of characters from the show. So a very interesting range going on here. Hope some of my choices weren't too controversial for you, especially that Katusha one. I feel like I'm going to have to be careful. I feel like the lynch mobs are going to be out baying for my blood on that one. But it's, you know, it's all just my opinion, my own kind of opinion of these characters. So I hope you found that interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know in the comments that, if you were putting together a tier list like this, would you move some of these characters around? Would some of them go in other areas? Would you put Katusha in a higher rank? Probably, I'm guessing. And would you put other ones who I've put high up, would you put them lower down? Who knows? So there you go. For those of you not aware, Propagandist is my second channel. My main channel, General Red Strategist, is where I do a lot of gaming content, and I update that one pretty much every day. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, you'll find a link to it in the video description below. Other than that, if you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like, comment as usual, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you for another video sometime in the future. Hopefully not too distant future, everybody. Goodbye all.